All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Best Self Blueprint, where the mission here really is to bring on people who I believe have the knowledge, insights, and experience as to what it takes to truly move the dial towards becoming the best version of yourself. So, this guest, I'm excited to have this guest because she embodies the mission of this show. She relentlessly pursues her dreams, constantly seeks growth in all areas of life, and has an overwhelming gratitude for life that pushes her to make the most of every single day. Not to mention her impressive life resume, which includes just some of them include dancing with the Milwaukee Ballet as a teenager, getting her master's degree in business administration, winning national qualification in bikini bodybuilding, traveling to beautiful locations to fitness model, and much, much more. That is the tip of the iceberg. She keeps a constant eye on her true north and her true self and works every day towards that truest, best version of who she is. And now, time to meet her. Welcome, Haley. How you doing?
Thank you, Trevor. That was so nice. I'm
Yeah,
really today. I'm super excited to chat with you some more and help whoever we can.
yeah, like I was saying, it is baffling to me how much stuff you've accomplished. And I'm very excited because I know you're the type of person who you don't just do things to check them off a list. You do them for a very deep reason as to like finding out who you really are, finding out what you're really passionate about, and then just really going after that stuff. So I'm going to start this in a kind of interesting spot.
Okay.
Do you do any like law of attraction or manifestation practices?
I'm doing them. That's a really great question. I'm doing them much more intentionally lately. I would say that, like, in my journey to who I am now, I didn't start that way consciously. That was like a thing that I kind of knew about and I liked it, but I wasn't taking time necessarily to do it. It was like more about a way of life that I sort of cultivated that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it just seems like it would be hard to go after and do all these things and have that inner knowing that I know you mentioned, which I want to get into that term as well. But just to have that vision of so clearly knowing like all these different things, and they're all across the board too. So just to do that, I was curious if you had some type of practice. Do you do any type of visualization where you picture a goal, or like, so what are a few of your daily practices that you think have helped you get to this crazy set of life accomplishments?
Sure. So I think, I mean, for me, as you know, fitness is like a huge foundational piece of that for me. Like working out, I know that it is like this very physical practice, but it is a really like a moving meditation. Like that is a space for clarity in my life. So that's really, I would say that I start my days off with movement. Not necessarily in the gym. I really like just like quiet time and no cell phones, none of that in the morning. And then like sometimes I'll do some work in journaling, like while I have not had interruption from other things in my life before I get to the actual gym. But then the gym is like a space for me to kind of carve out my own like thoughts, emotions, and like set intentions for the day and like get really like they say that, right, run the day or the day runs you. so um so that's like that would be like my morning setup kind of to get there. And the gym though was not always like that for me. I like so I actually have like quite a bit of anxiety, and I was started training with a guy. He was actually ex NFL, and I missed like a chunk of like probably a month of training with him because as I like got it, like was there less, I got more anxious. And then finally I showed back up again and he was like, "Hey, so where have you been?" And I was like, "Oh, like life." And he's like, "It gets pretty crazy out there. So, use this as like your space to ground." And that was about 10 years ago now. And I've been using that as like motivation and like a way of going about that to begin with.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point of a really crucial part of a successful day is an intentional morning routine,
Mhm.
because I think there's really two ways to live life, and it's proactive or reactive. And there's a much more fun option, and that's proactive. So when
Yeah.
you have that ability to, like you said, ground yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and set that intention for not only what you want to do for the day, but who you want to be. I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of power in that, especially when you do it, like you mentioned, before, Instagram catches your eye or the text messages catch your eye. So I'm curious, just to completely pivot, what has been the biggest obstacle between you and reaching these goals that you set for yourself? Because you have, again, you've lined them up and knocked them down, but I'm going to guess there was a little resistance along the way.
Oh
So
yeah.
what was like the biggest common obstacle you noticed when you actively chase these things?
Which one do you want to talk about? I so for me, I'm gonna say the biggest is my own self. Um,
Yeah, elaborate on that. That's interesting.
yeah, that's maybe this comes back to like the inner knowing piece. Like I think that you can know something and actively fight yourself on it, or like subconsciously fight yourself on it, because subconscious, I just learned this fun fact, is always going to operate in like more of a negative, more of a fight or flight way than it is going to be positive. So when you start talking about law of attraction stuff, like that's actual training that you have to do to your subconscious mind. But a little nerd out for you for a minute. So like I think that, yeah, it's definitely myself, because I can talk myself into, yes, you should go for your dreams and like follow your heart and have intuition and inner knowing on that thing, and also be like, that's not that safe or secure, or what if it doesn't work? So there's like a huge self-doubt piece, which arguably is what led me to get my MBA. But which I'm happy that I did it, but that was like a veer off of maybe my like inner truth and inner knowing. Um,
Yeah, that was your safety net, if you will.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. So you've said the word inner knowing, and we talked about it earlier as well. When you hear or say the words inner knowing, what does that mean to you?
For me, that is like the ability to get still and like really hear yourself speak, or like I'm going to call it like intuition or the divine sort of speaking to you, like, or that gut feeling like you should do this thing. Like you kind of know, like that sounds a little bit woo woo, but it's like this just kind of what it sounds like. It is this inner knowing that like this is the next right step for you. And then you have a choice, obviously. Do you take it or not?
Yeah, I completely agree with the gut feeling and intuition, where you have this weird emotional ability to connect to what's happening in your life, no matter how logical or illogical, reasonable or unreasonable. There just seems to be, and that's why I wanted to clarify it. So we're definitely on the same page, that inner knowing of this may be completely out of left field, but I know it's right. I
Yeah.
can't tell you why. I can't tell you what makes me justify it, but I know it's right. And I
Completely.
think that's something a lot of people have to tune back into. Now, that doesn't mean like I'm just going to eat this ice cream because my inner knowing tells me I need a tub of ice cream. But having that emotional intelligence and surrendering to that enough to really have a trusting relationship with that feeling, I think is huge.
I think that is like spot on. Like self trust is a thing that I like really love to talk with people about. We hear about like self care, self love, all of this a lot. Self trust for me is almost more vital day to day, I think. So that like, because we have all these voices, we have social media, we have friends, family, who the heck ever we see. Um, but if you can get back to yourself and like really trust that and have self efficacy that you can do things, like that's where it's at, in my opinion.
Yeah. So that leads me to the next phrase that you said that I just want to pick your brain about. I love this phrase, failing through it.
Oh, yeah.
If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we can plan all we want, right? And plans sometimes change or kind of backfire or just whatever. So I think that there is just like I have for other people and like just a huge amount of respect. And I'm just like impressed with people that can like kind of try something and it doesn't work and then they still get back on it and just say, okay, how can I adjust, or like how can I totally change this and revamp. So it's like a constant evolution of things, and feeling through it is a way that is really good for learning. um like for my own self, I think that like the number of times that I would consider I failed is probably a lot, but I wouldn't trade those moments either, because I learned from them and can move forward. And I can also like share that with people and hope that like that leads them to success a little bit sooner than me. Um,
Yeah. So, and I'll kind of piggyback off of that. So as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about, of all the people I have lined up for interviews, I think it's safe to say that they've failed more than most people have failed, which is why I think of them as such a success, because those people, they failed hundreds upon thousands of times and learned from all of those failures to get them to the point where they're sharp as a tack. And I think that's a big part of it, is failing your way through it, but failing and then learning. I think if you're just failing, it's going to be a really unfortunate way of life if you're not taking any lessons from it and you
yeah.
just keep just getting knocked down time after time. But yeah, it's interesting that you use that. So is that something that, let's say for like the bikini bodybuilding competitions, let's say you obviously train hard, you have to have a perfect diet, perfect, sleep schedule, workout program, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Let's say you put in all that work, you get to the competition and you tank. So you
Yeah.
failed.
Yeah.
What's your process then when you do fail? What's the process for you to extract the information needed?
Mhm. I think for starters, I think, and this is something that's actually relatively new to my process, I like allow the grief, because um, that's like the human experience is not perfect. And so I think that it's like super okay to experience the sadness and the grief that's there and like acknowledge why that's going on for you, because I think it's different depending on like what the experience was like with. I mean, I have lost my own fair share of bikini shows. um, to get off stage and be like, man, why, like that was such a bummer for me, because then you can move from there. And like in order to experience like true happiness and success, I think you need those moments. You need that like opposite emotion so you can have that equal and opposite experience. Um, but and then it's like a process of moving forward and being like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Like, is there anything that I could have done this round better? Like, why did that happen? With bikini, it's so subjective. So it's like hard to sometimes say, like, sometimes it's just who shows up, what judges are there, and things like that. But usually it's like, did I actually drink all the water I should have? Did I get the rest I should have? Did I train as hard as I could have? Did I skip cardio sessions? Just like the like tactical stuff, it gets evaluated first. And then I think there's this piece that's like, what was my mindset like? Like, did I believe in myself the whole way through, or did I like doubt what I could do? Um, was I like reinforcing, okay, yes, in 2 weeks I need to hit this weight target or this body fat percentage, and I can do that in 2 weeks. Um, So I think that like there's those pieces, like the actual physical pieces too, that can be adjusted. There's like more of that just like mindset that's not very like tactile. You're not able to touch it. It's just like inner work that you need to do. And then I think it's like just being like, okay, here's the thing that I'm going to adjust going into the next one. And sort of like science experiments in school, like you want to keep that constant and then like refine. And each time, it might not be a lot because you do get better, hopefully, like day to day, you just are adjusting your habits so that they're improving along the way. And then each time it's just like an evolution, the next level, and intensifies that way.
Yeah, anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love a word that you use twice in that description, and it's mindset. I think if you have the right mindset, oh, you are off to the races with such an advantage. So, how do you actually cultivate the right mindset to instill that belief, to instill that confidence, to instill that drive and that work ethic? What have you done to sharpen your mindset?
Sharpen mindset. Let's see. I'm like a chronic optimist. And that's like I'm really grateful for that, like that I'm just sort of made that way. But I would say that piece of it is really um essential, like at the beginnings parts of it. It just needs to be like cultivating more positivity within every realm of your life, and just like approaching with a positive outlook, right? And then as far as cultivating like confidence goes, I would say that that piece of it, that belief in yourself, it comes more from, for me, it comes more from like actually executing what I said I was going to do. Like, um, there is this phrase that I like. I spoke a little bit about anxiety. That action is the antithesis to anxiety. So I do think that if like you can just like execute your strategy, you start to believe in yourself, and you start to say like, oh my gosh, I can actually see the improvement. I'm putting in the work. I'm seeing the results and progress, um, which is great for motivation and inspiration, but it's also like deeply rooted to mindset. Even if it's just like basic, like I'm going to get up tomorrow at 6 a.m. and just spend 10 minutes being quiet and then get coffee. Like, it's not really a big goal. But like if you just stick to it and you're not like, oh, I'll hit snooze, it's gonna be fine. I don't really have to get my day going till a little later. Like just that one action is like, bam, now we're on.
Yeah. So the when you explain action and how it's inversely correlated to anxiety, the phrase I think of is what is it? Analysis paralysis. I
Mhm.
think that's what a lot of people get when I mean, and that whether that's again health, fitness, a career goal, a relationship goal, anything, if it's something that really you notice is outside of your current limits, I think a lot of people just get frozen because of all the different routes you can take, and especially with the internet, with Google. I mean, you can find 100 different ways to do just about everything. And so it really comes down to you can acquire as much knowledge as you want, but you got to implement that. That's what's going to really get you where you want to go. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Completely. I read a study a while ago that was like, I mean, I think that, don't get me wrong here, I think that you should be you should do your due diligence to research what you want to do next, and figure out, does that align with me and where I'm trying to get to. But there is some research out there that's like people that make fast quick decisions are actually happier because they don't have that moment of analysis paralysis
Hmm.
as much as other people.
I could definitely see that. But I also think a big part of that is so one habit I have is every Sunday night I go through my entire weekly schedule.
Mhm.
And from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, there is zero white space in my calendar.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm just constantly like, I'm not one of those grind all day, every day kind of people, but it'll say like relax and hang out from 6 to 8:30 or drive from here to here. It'll take 20 minutes. It's filled in. But I think a big part of it is people don't take the preemptive strike. So then again, they're reactionary, which means they're already on their heels as opposed to leaning in and having that proactive ability to conquer the things they want to do.
Mhm.
So I agree with do your research, but do it on the front end, instill that belief that you know how to do it. And then, like you said, just the self trust, like just lean into the fact that you can do it and put the pedal to the metal.
Yeah. Well, and if you fail, here like we went all the way in a circle. If you fail, you just keep going. You're like, all right,
Yeah.
let's reevaluate and move again. Yeah.
And so my counterintuitive approach to looking at failure is just thinking about it statistically speaking. So let's say, because I do some public speaking, let's say I'm scared out of my mind to talk in front of people, but I want to be a public speaker. Now, if I'm afraid to, book a gig because it makes me nervous, but I have a goal to do it, even if I fail, I at least have a chance of succeeding if I go out and do the thing.
Yeah.
If I don't go out and do the thing, statistically speaking, I have a 0% chance of making it happen. So it's up to you to know, yeah, you could fail, but you're going to be okay.
Hmm.
No one's going to care except for you. And you got to take the punch and keep moving.
Yeah.
So another question I have to follow that is, do you think the more times you fail, the easier it gets? Or do you think every new time is, as fresh as can be?
That is an amazing question. I don't know. I'm gonna say it doesn't get like easier to like swallow, but it gets easier to pivot from.
Ooh, okay. So it's easier to kind of bounce back.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think again, this is total speculation. I am not the expert on this, but I think if it's you failing at the same thing, it probably gets easier and easier. But I think every time you go at something new and you fail, I think it's a little bit of a different kind of sting.
I would say that yes.
Yeah.
And it
That's
just,
interesting. That was totally off script. I didn't even plan to go down that road, but
that's okay. Yeah.
that's just an interesting little thought experiment.
Yeah.
So one question I have for you specifically, because you are a coach, like you work with people on mindset and on well-being and health and wellness and fitness. So I'm guessing, like me, you've come across people who they're so motivated, they're so amped up to do it. They get 2 weeks in and you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
So what's your advice for people who are just getting started? They do have like, that kind of butterfly in your stomach. I'm excited. I see all the potential, the possibilities. What's your advice for those people to make sure that they actually stick with it and don't drop off as soon as that feeling does?
Mm. There's probably a couple things there. I this is like not intuitive. I would say don't get ambitious right now, right out of the gate. Um, I love the ambition. I like because my heart is that way as well. Like I want to go 300% running full speed, like and have the results in 30 days, and it's gonna be awesome. Like and like that's not that's not usually how weight loss goes or like building muscle goes or the best relationships or the best kinds of careers or dreams get there. Like it's usually so much more of a process than that. And so I am very sustainability focused and like, okay, based on where you're at right now, like what feels like a achievable goal that you would be proud of next week so that you can build momentum and build motivation. Like yes, you have this initial spark of it that's really exciting, but I'm sure, as you know, we're working with training and nutrition clients. It's just like that initial spark is really exciting, but like the pathway to progress and like your ultimate goal is not as sexy as that initial spark that's like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm totally motivated.
Yeah, and it's something you hear all the time, at least in the self-development world, is anyone who has reached a high level of success will say that exact thing of, people see success as this sexy thing, but to get to that point of success is being willing to do the most mundane, dry things that nobody wants to do, but you're going to do it, and you're going to do it to the best of your ability because you know what that gets you. And I think that's just such a misinterpretation of what success is in life.
Mhm.
And it's not just always doing fun, exciting things. It's maybe doing that workout that you don't want to do. Your bed is nice and warm. Your
Yeah,
room is nice and cold, especially here in Wisconsin in winter. But just having that automatic response of, I know why I'm doing this. I know I need to do it, and I'm going to get it done.
for sure. I had a couple of thoughts there, Trevor. What do you
Sure.
think about like fear of failure versus like fear of success?
Yeah, so that has always baffled me, but I think that's because I I talked about it on the talk with Chris as well, but I used to be very egocentric where I thought, I am this high moralized person. What I think is the right way, and um I was very just driven on like, I know what it takes to be successful. I'm going to do the research and I'm going to figure it out. And I like, that's just such a bad approach. So I never had a fear of success. I had a fear of what success was doing to me as a person and my ego. And so I think fear of failure is what holds more people back. But I think fear of success is when people aren't ready to handle the stress that comes with that level of, whether it's fame, fortune, success, and just like praise. A lot of people don't know how to handle praise the right way. Um, but other than that, I don't think about it all that much because of the fact that I think if you are building something and you just lay it brick by brick and you lay each brick as perfectly as you can and you
Mhm.
have a quality foundation, you have nothing to fear. And
Totally.
that's including failure or success. But
Yeah. I think
yeah,
that's
that's a good question.
you've got like the habits laid out, right? So then you're just like, no matter what the end goal is, like you're just doing the things anyway. So like it's going somewhere, like it does. Everything happens. And so I do think that like there's less there, like you're saying, there's less to fear if you're just like, well, these are my things that I do. Like that's my process, and that's how like progress is made. And it is like that mundane stuff. But I think that too, like that mundane stuff, like I often say this about bodybuilding, like it is really restricted and it's super mundane and it kind of is like this extra job that keeps me busy, but like the more regimented that I can get with that or like my work or my day-to-day schedule also like allows me to find more freedom and like more opportunity for like fun or other growth sorts of things to do. So I think that that's like an exciting thing for people to find as well. When you start to like get that rhythm, then you can like motivate yourself to do the next thing too, because you've like built the momentum, you've built the self-efficacy and trust.
Yeah, so I think a part of that, going back to, I love that question with the fear of success, is as you were describing that, I'm just thinking about change,
Mhm.
whether for the better or for the worse. I think the reason people may fear success as well is because when your ego gets involved, your ego and your self image are hardwired, they are ingrained. And so even if you go from, let's say, average to really successful, your ego doesn't know how to handle that because that's not you. You are not that successful person. In your head, you are that average person. And so I think it's not necessarily a conscious fear,
Mhm.
but a subconscious attachment to the ego that really tries to pull you back to that, like, okay, I'm comfortable as this version of myself. It may not be that idealistic version, but it's where I'm comfortable. And so being able to break through the barrier of your ego just grabbing you by the ankles and dragging you back
Yeah.
is a really important part of that process.
Completely. I think yes, like comfort is huge, and imposter syndrome, that's something that like I experience quite a bit actually, is like, oh, that's really not who I am. So it's like that's where it's like, oh, I can sink back to where I'm like kind of comfortable and I feel like I'm in my lane, but I want to go out. I want to go out and get like more expansive and to a higher level of self actualization, right? And so like it's everything is gonna feel like a little bit like you're faking it till you're making it, until you fake it till you make it, and then you're like, oh, I've arrived. Cool. Now I'll keep going.
Yeah, I think another a good tool that I added to my toolkit was when I did my first big public speaking gig. At first, I had complete imposter syndrome where I was like, there is, because I was the expert speaker on stress reduction, mental health, things like that. And in my head, I'm like, the people I'm talking to are like vice presidents and presidents and heads of their teams and all these things. And I'm like, and they have way more experience than I do. But then what I switched my mindset to is gratitude.
Mhm.
And I really think gratitude is this all encompassing tool that you can use. So, what I mean to elaborate is when I had that imposter syndrome, and I was like, oh, why am I here? Like, maybe I can't help. But then I switched it to, well, I'm just grateful that I have the chance to share what I do know. Maybe
100%.
maybe it's not as much as I think I should, or maybe I do feel like an imposter, but I know that I know something about this. Otherwise, there's no way they would have given me this opportunity. And I'm just so grateful that I have the ability to be that mediator and that middleman of that information. So, yeah, maybe you're not this big shot, but you can be the middleman and you can be the messenger. And so I think a lot of it is just perspective when it comes down to things like that.
Totally.
All right. So we're gonna change directions a little bit.
Okay.
And I think this is still along the lines of mindset, as most things are that I wanted to talk to you about. But what advice do you have for someone who has like a big dream, a big goal, or just they want a huge lifestyle change? But obviously that is something that is very tough to do, especially if you have a spouse, if you have kids, if you have family in an area. What's your advice to people who want to make a change like that but are just freaked out and can't initialize it?
Well, speaking of gratitude, in my own life, I am really grateful for the opportunity to do what I'm about to advise and not have a lot of responsibilities that have made it a little bit tougher for me. But even in those situations, I think that taking a calculated risk is like it would be my advice. And is I would always say like take the risk, because greater risk, greater reward. Like that's very much my mentality on it. And if you're passionate about it, then you're going to make it work, right? So um, I think that that would be like the baseline for it. And then it's like figuring out um, what what can I do to support steps towards it. Like I used to work in economic development, and some of the scariest things that we would see are like entrepreneurs that had full-time jobs, but they would just straight up quit their full-time job to pursue their entrepreneur venture, which is like amazing. Way to go for you for taking that bold step. But especially if you start to get into like they're married, have kids, own a home, like things like that, it becomes a little bit more risky. So like taking calculated risk is like, okay, I'm gonna do my full-time work while I side hustle until I determine when I can make that shift to have that be full-time. I think that's like a huge piece. And there's so many ways that that can show up. That's just like a more concrete example that I have for that. Like diet wise, I do think it's like the same sort of thing. Like figure out like where the support is so that you can make like an incremental shift until it's a 100% shift.
Yeah. So I completely agree. I think what tying back to what we were talking about with when people first start, they have that spark, that drive. And so they want to just like chips are all in. And I think it's important to, like you were talking about, don't just flip the script completely and go all in right away. That's how burnout happens. And so I think it's smart to, yeah, just, okay, dumb it down to the point where it's almost condescending to yourself how easy it is to make the change. So like, for example, like I think what you're talking about is if you have this 9 to 5 that maybe isn't passion filled and you want to go be an artist, start by carving out an hour or two a week to commit to your art.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, okay, maybe start like once a month, go to like an art show or an art gallery and submit your work. And as those things, once you actually hit that next level and have it comfortably, then implement the next step.
Completely.
Yeah, I really like that.
Because otherwise it gets like really daunting. Like a lot of clients, I'll speak about my own experience. How's that? Like a lot of times people will ask me how I got into bodybuilding. And there's like a longer answer to that, but here's the shorter answer. I was really bored. And because I was already working out. Like I had a practice. Like I had already gotten to the level where I was in the gym 4 to 5 days a week and did 3 to 4 extra days of cardio. And I was just like, all right, this is my routine. This is what I do. This is my job routine. Like my apartment is settled. Now what? And I thought, oh, you know what? I can step this up and go a little farther. But it's because I already had that foundation so that I could push it. So there's that, there's that like slight adjustment, right? In my bigger like sphere of life, like I mentioned, I was working in economic development. I got my MBA because I got distracted by security for a minute. And then I was working as a business consultant and decided, ooh, I am on somebody else's life path right now and living someone else's dream. Like, how do I start to shift back to my dream? So then it was like, I had to look at like, how can I make my just basic life kind of work? And then how can I start to make shifts to get more involved in coaching and bodybuilding and modeling? And like, how can those things support my like basic life bills and all of this, and then create a bigger lifestyle around it? So to be honest with you, like I'm still sort of in that, like I'm just like supporting my life right now and working towards expanding that. But like I changed jobs, I changed career industries in order to get to that level so that I had more freedom to be in the gym and competing and travel to do modeling stuff and all of this. But it's like that calculated risk where there's support without just going all the way to the other side, you know?
Yeah, well, so to kind of tie it back to one thing you said in the middle that I try so hard to hammer this point home for people. What you need to think about, the earlier the better, is what you're doing with your life. Is it really your dream or is it someone else's? Is it your parents? Is it when you were growing up in school, was it your teachers? Was it your coaches? Really taking the time to internalize that question and think about, am I doing this truly because this is something I love and I'm passionate about and feel is the best path for me in this life? Or am I doing it because I was influenced by certain people to make different decisions along the way? And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who I'm 23, and I think there are a lot of people my age who are just getting out of undergrad and they just got their bachelor's and they're going into a field and they're miserable
Yeah.
because all of a sudden they're realizing, oh crap, I am going to be doing this for 40 more years and it sucks.
Yeah.
And so it's so important to, yes, you do need to make enough money to, support the
Mhm.
lifestyle you want to live. Don't get me wrong, but time is so much more important than money.
Yeah.
And if you aren't enjoying your time, which you cannot get back, you got to pivot one direction or another.
Yeah. You can always make more money. You can't always make more time.
Yeah. If you can make more time,
Yes.
come on the podcast because that'll be life-changing.
Yeah.
All right. So I have two more questions. They are the same two questions I ask everyone at the end.
All
But
right.
before I do that, where can people connect with you, ask you questions, talk to you about what you're doing in health and fitness?
Sure. I would say I'm most readily available on Instagram, and my handle is at Haley with 3 Y's, HALEYYY, Halv, HALV. Seriously, yeah, feel free to hit me up there because I can talk about this stuff all day.
All right. Hopefully we'll get some people asking questions because you definitely know your stuff when it comes to alignment, staying true to who you are, and making the most of that version of yourself. All right.
Thank
My
you.
favorite part is these last two questions.
Great.
First question: what right now is the biggest obstacle between you and your best self?
I am gonna say the same thing that I did before. It's just me. It's just like it's super super easy to say like just execute like I did before. And there's times where I'm much more successful at doing that, and there's times where I'm not as successful at doing that. And so it really is just like doing the work and and also not caring as much about what everybody else is thinking.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's a good point to bring up of when you're doing what you feel is in alignment with you and your true self. Yes, obviously, if there's someone you really trust that knows you well, listen to what they have to say, but you gotta tune out the noise and the distractions and give yourself time to just think for yourself.
Totally. And
So that's
it's scary, right? Like that's another thing that's super easy to say, like, just do you, like, you got this, be yourself. Like, that's like really nice blanket advice, kind of, but um, it's scary, like, when you're putting your heart out, like your work out into the world, and or your words, your message, and you're like, hopefully this resonates. So,
yeah,
um,
it is tough. And I just think it's one of those things, practice doesn't make perfect, but the more the more often you are willing to put that stuff out,
yeah,
regardless of the feedback, but just because you love it, I think that's where you'll get a little more comfortable with that process.
totally, totally.
All right. So the last question, I love this question, especially coming from the people who I have on. What is one challenge you have for whoever listens to this that if they were to do this thing, it would better their life?
I think it is to get up and tell yourself 3 things that you love about yourself.
Ooh, all right. The first thing in the morning, I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So I will promise you, just like I promised Chris as well, I'm going to be sending his was write down 10 things that you're scared of doing
Mm,
and one at a time cross them off.
yeah.
So I'm going to be sending him my list of 10 things.
Okay.
I will send you, we'll say, I'll send you like 3 or 4 days in a row, my 3 things.
Love it.
just because I want to make sure that I'm practicing what you guys are talking about. Otherwise, there's no reason for this if I'm not even doing it.
Yeah.
All right. So before we wrap up, I just want to thank you for coming on. Again, the reason I'm bringing certain people on here is to talk about their knowledge, their insights, and their experience as to what it means to be your best self. So the fact that I thought of you, you should be very honored in knowing that you set an example for so many people, and just the way that you live your life, the way you talk with other people, connect with other people, the example that you set is incredible. And so I'm so thankful that, you're doing the things you're doing. I'm thankful that you took the time out to talk to everybody. Even if there's two people who listen to this, those two people will be better off for it. So thank you so, so much.
Well, thank you. And thanks for being you and amazing as well.
You bet. I will keep doing what I can. All right. So that is it for this one. Again, everybody who is paying attention, mindset is huge. Make sure that you're doing the internal works to get confident, get comfortable with who you are, but know where you need to go to be fulfilled and to reignite that passion in your life. If that's bikini bodybuilding, go do that. If that's drawing for an hour a week, go do that. But just do something that reignites that childlike passion. So that is it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you believe this is helpful for yourself or for someone else, please share it. And other than that, have a lovely day. Haley, thank you again, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks.